What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. I'm one of the hosts of the podcast, Kevin Valentin.
And I'm the other host of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabro. Kevin, I think we got some news to break, my guy.
It's been it's been a crazy couple weeks, but yes, we do. We got some big news, and without further ado, the Neighborhood Podcast has signed with Electricast Media out of LA. They are a smaller media group that is helping and assisting a lot of podcasts out there on their audio platforms. So we will be working with them for the foreseeable future, and we can't wait to get started with them. We can't wait to get the ball rolling. We signed the contract just a couple of days ago, and soon enough, you guys will be hearing us on a different platform for audio purposes called Megaphone. But, things are going to continue to roll. We're going to continue to do business as usual, but we are beyond grateful for the opportunity to be working with such an incredible organization.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much just going to reiterate what Kevin said. Just we're grateful for the opportunity that Electricast has given us, and hopefully it goes smooth from here on out. And I'm really looking forward to it. So I know Kev's got the same feeling. But with that said, we've got some topics to get into, my guy. Do you want me to go over the topics today, or do you want to take it over?
Shoot, bro.
All right, so I think it's safe to say that the NBA world was turned upside down on just a huge breaking news story that came with Donovan Mitchell being traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was something that really kind of caught the attention of me and Kevin. We were both at work, and Kevin and I were both talking about it throughout the day. And I will say this: obviously, Donovan going to Cleveland makes him a huge. It gives Cleveland a huge bump going into this upcoming season, but I think it is also safe to say that Utah got a pretty good haul from Cleveland from this deal as well. So we'll dive into that trade a little bit more, but a huge trade took place in the NBA with Donovan going from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference. So that'll definitely be something to talk about. Then we'll kick it over to football for a couple segments. We'll talk about Russell Wilson signing a 5-year extension with the Denver Broncos. As most of you know, he was traded this past offseason from Seattle to Denver. Denver has now committed to Russell Wilson for the next 5 years. So he's locked in. I believe 2/3 of that contract was guaranteed. So Russell got a pretty good payday from it. But we'll talk about the impact that Russell's going to have with the Denver Broncos and whether or not they're going to be viably as far as a Super Bowl is concerned in the immediate future with Russell at the helm. After that, we'll talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have really been busy the last couple days. Really, just the one team in the NFC that's really been kind of busy just as far as the moves that they've been making. Uh, they went out and traded Gardner Johnson from the Saints, so they bring him into the fold to pair up with Darius Slay. Trading Jalen Rager to the Minnesota Vikings. I know Kev's going to probably take that segment pretty much full on with that one. I mean, I'll probably have some things to say about that, but I know Kev has kind of become a pseudo Eagles fan just because of his affiliation with his girlfriend's family. But overall, that'll be a pretty fun segment to dive into. And then we'll round out the episode with just the upcoming weekend of college football games. College football is back; it's in the fold. Some of the games have already been ongoing. Uh, Kevin and I were watching the Pittsburgh West Virginia game, and that game was electric. It,
Wild.
by the time you guys hear it, I mean the game will already be over. But uh, just based off of what we're recording right now, um, I believe Pitt returned a pick six to put them out 7 points with like 2.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and just the stadium. I mean, Heinz Field. I know it's a different name now, but I'm still going to call it Heinz Field. Was going absolutely bonkers after that pick six. So college football is back, and I know Kevin and I are really excited to get to that segment to round out the episode. But with that said, we're going to dive into that NBA topic that we mentioned earlier. We're going to talk about Donovan Mitchell being traded to the Cavs. Obviously, this is a huge trade uh, before the season starts. Donovan Mitchell had been in the headlines over the last couple of weeks or so about possibly being traded from Utah. Really, the one team that was making a huge push for him early on was the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks once again get spurned. That's probably something we'll talk about a little bit later. But Donovan ends up going to the Cavs. The Cavs, I would assume, jump to at least the top four, top five seed in the Eastern Conference because of this move. But this is probably one of the biggest preseason trades that we'll see before the season actually starts. So, Kevin, to get this one to you, with Donovan Mitchell being traded from the Jazz to the Cavs, what do you think his impact is going to be for Cleveland this upcoming season?
I think it's going to be big. I think it's going to assist the team offensively, give Darius Garland a little bit of a break to not have to shoulder the weight of the franchise on his shoulders. A very young, athletic individual, obviously an all-star as well. I think that backcourt is going to be one of the better backcourts in the Eastern Conference. I think you pair that with the young core that they have building right now. Aside from Garland, you also have Mobley, you also have Jared Allen to protect the rim. And you have, of course, some veteran players on that bench like Ricky Rubio, although coming off of a couple of injuries, you may say that he may not be as viable as he once was, but still a veteran nonetheless. As an overall whole, I would say that Cleveland, like Kyle said, will probably be around the 4 or 5 seed, depending on how the top few seeds in the East do with the Celtics, the Heat, and then, of course, obviously the Buccaneers and the 76ers. Not the Buccaneers, excuse me, the Milwaukee Bucks. Sorry, football season's on my mind. It just doesn't seem to go away. I don't necessarily know how good it's going to be chemistry wise. Now, I was talking to Kyle about this just a few minutes ago, and obviously earlier in today. Darius Garland is a true point guard, someone that needs to have the ball in their hands at all times, someone that likes to facilitate, but at the same time can take over a game on the offensive side of the ball. Donovan Mitchell, since he's been in the league, has always been the give me the ball, I'll bring it up. Give me the ball, I'll make a shot. Give me the ball, I'll throw it up kind of player since he's literally been drafted. They've never necessarily had a true point guard out in Utah. I mean, Mike Conley was traded, but he was also hurt, inconsistently in and out of the lineup, and at the same time, very passive. Donovan always had the ball for the majority of the time. Darius is very young. Darius just got a massive contract himself. I'm hoping that the addition of Donovan Mitchell does not regress his immediate development. I hope that Donovan doesn't take shots away from Garland. I hope that he doesn't take opportunities to feed other players because we all know that Donovan tends to get into those mindsets of, I got to get us back in this game. And we saw it in the playoffs against the Mavericks this past season as just one sample size of an example. Sometimes he shot them out of quarters. Did he bring them back in others? Absolutely. But basketball is a game of runs, and sometimes you putting up the amount of shots that you did in the manner in which you didn't always bode well for Utah. Now, you can make the argument that he didn't really have offensive help like a Darius Garland in his corner, but once again, when you're sitting there, two young guards fighting for the spotlight, two young guards fighting for the identity of the team, it could pose a threat. And I'm not saying that Darius is going to, be resistant, and I'm not saying that Donovan is going to be selfish. It's just a matter of will they be able to make a decision of who will take that shot at the end of the game and who will be able to facilitate at a consistent basis. So again, it's going to be good overall because Donovan Mitchell is an all-pro caliber player. He is a multiple-time All-Star, young in his career. I do believe that Donovan is going to provide them with some sort of a spark to carry them at least into the minimum second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs. But to say early enough that they can compete for a finals, it's just a little too early for me. But overall, I think the trade is great. And obviously, you know, Danny Ainge has 15 first round picks over the next 7 years. So he is sitting here pretty with quite the future ahead of him in Utah. So I think that they're doing pretty well for themselves in terms about building for the future.
I think overall, when I look at Cleveland specifically, I think this probably catapults them into probably a top four, top five seeding in the upcoming season for them. It's just, when you bring somebody like Donovan Mitchell in, the prolific player that he's going to present on that roster, I think that's going to be a huge bump for Cleveland moving forward. Overall, I look at their starting five, it's going to be Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. I would assume Isaiah Okoro. He's probably going to be the shooting forward for them. Then Evan Mobley, and then Jared Allen at the five. I mean, overall, that's a pretty young roster to work with, and I think it's going to bode well for them this upcoming season. I think the point that you mentioned about how Donovan and Darius are going to split, uh, really how someone's going to bring the ball up, I think that's probably an interesting point to make, just because, well, in Utah, I mean, Donovan was, the main guy to go to as far as bringing the ball up. And I think you tie that in with what Darius did over the last year. I mean, you look at last year specifically, I thought Darius had a solid year from beginning to end. And at a relatively young age, I think that was something that Cleveland really looked forward to, just because they gave him that huge, massive contract extension just a couple months back. And I think, looking at the 1-2 punch here of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, I think it's going to be solid for Cleveland moving forward. I'm with you on the whole. Let's not like put Cleveland like going straight to the finals yet. When I look at the Eastern Conference, I still think Boston's a better team. I still think that 76ers are a competitive team. I think the Milwaukee Bucks are a better team. And I still think that the Miami Heat are still a solid team. So obviously, I know there's a lot of hype around Cleveland right now just because of bringing someone like Donovan into the fold, but it doesn't necessarily catapult them to the top. Um, Donovan's in his prime. He's definitely going to bring a huge spark to Cleveland. I'm not going to begrudge that point, but I think we need to pump the brakes about them going all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even potentially a Finals appearance. I don't think that's going to happen initially, but I think as time goes on and maybe Donovan just gets better chemistry with the players on the roster for Cleveland, I think maybe a couple years down the road, maybe we can amend that prediction. But as of right now, I just can't jump to that conclusion yet.
It's going to be an interesting season for Cleveland nonetheless because obviously they came into their own identity last year. They fought, they had some injuries, they ended up missing the play-in and lost to Atlanta, or losing in the play-in, should I say? And it didn't bode well for them. It kind of gave us a bad taste in our mouths, at least for me, because they did so well early on, and to kind of have the collapse that they did in the second half of the year, albeit like I said, due to injuries they really weren't able to get back into that rhythm. Hopefully, with Jared Allen being healthy, hopefully with Mobley continuing to develop like he did last year, and the continuous development of Darius Garland, and now you add the incredible offensive firepower that Donovan Mitchell provides to any organization, and you again, like we've said a couple of times, you hope that that puts them in a place of competition. You hope that that puts them in a place to actually be able to, fight alongside some of those higher seeded teams in the East. But overall, it's just like I said, it's going to be an exciting couple of weeks to see how this transpires along the NBA. Now, here's what I wanted to propose to Kyle, kind of like as a mini segment, because Kyle is our neighborhood troll for the New York Knicks. Dude, I gotta ask you straight up. The Knicks offered a pretty hefty package to Utah to acquire Donovan Mitchell. Pretty much everything except the washing machine in the locker room. And the Knicks still didn't find a way to acquire Donovan Mitchell. What does this mean for the Knicks, man?
I mean, overall, it's just kind of a continuation of what they've been for as long as I've been alive. Barring the whole Carmelo thing for a couple years, the Knicks have never been able to bring in a superstar, and this includes Donovan Mitchell as well. It's just when I look at what New York offered back in July, they were willing to give up R.J. Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, Obi Toppin, and 3 unprotected first round picks. I mean, that's a massive haul that New York was willing to give up in exchange for Donovan. And I am kind of surprised that Utah wasn't willing to pull the trigger on that one. I think the only reason why they may have been uh, committed to making this deal with the Cavs instead of the Knicks was maybe the language around those draft picks, just because I know Utah's in a full rebuild mode and they really are putting a big emphasis on those draft picks. So maybe that was a part of the issue early on with that Knicks offer. But it's really just kind of a continuation where it seems to me like the Knicks are just going to be trolled endlessly over this. It just, once again, they miss out on a key superstar that they could add to the roster and they just miss. I mean, they missed a couple years ago with Kevin Durant and Kyrie. I still am of the mindset that that one stings worse because they ended up going to Brooklyn instead of going to the Garden and playing with the Knicks. But this one's up there because from the start, once the rumors were confirmed that Donovan was on the trade block from Utah, the Knicks were at the forefront of those trade packages. And the fact that they weren't able to pull Donovan Mitchell into the fold, it's just a massive failure. And I think it just kind of goes to show that no matter who you really kind of put in the front office for the Knicks, it just doesn't turn out results that they need. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know the Knicks. They've been up and down the last couple of years. Last year was a tire fire from them, but the year before they were actually pretty solid. But yeah, this just kind of goes to show that it's the Knicks, bro. They just swing and miss when it comes to superstars. Outside of Carmelo, they've missed on every single superstar that I can name of, whether it was in free agency or when a possible trade got brought up. And it's really, I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. I don't really see that changing anytime soon.
I can't wrap my head around how New York just continues to fumble literally every opportunity they have. It's the greatest city in the world for a lot of people. It's one of the most historic franchises in the NBA. And because of the name Dolan, I really do think people just do not want to play for them. I mean, he's literally one of the worst owners, if not the worst owner. I mean, depending on who you ask in sports. He's out here more focused on making sure that Spike Lee has an issue getting to his seat because they have a personal beef, as opposed to prioritizing personnel on the team. I mean, for God's sakes, they appointed Phil Jackson the VP. They gave Derek Fisher a job. They so many head coaches over the last few seasons, and nothing has panned out. Free agents, like Kyle said, trade opportunities, like Kyle said, just have all fallen through. I will always support the Knicks because that is the hometown team. I will always cheer for them, unless they're playing the Mavericks, of course. And I just can't understand why they can't catch a break. Bro, everybody in the media, not just Kyle, not just me, not just professionals, all thought if Donovan was leaving, it had to be New York. Miami was rumored for a long time. That went nowhere. You know, like the Lakers were involved for a couple of days. That went nowhere. It was like the only consistent team that was consistently, I don't know why I just said consistent like 18 times in a row. I don't know, the only team that was frequent in these talks were the Knicks, and they didn't acquire him. And the fact that they were willing to offer their entire future for one player just goes to show that they were beyond desperate, and it ended up blowing up in their face. So good for me not having to deal with him in the Western Conference. Well, good for Kyle too. But you know, for him going to the East, the Knicks having to play the Cavs a few times a year, that those games are going to sting, man. It's going to be like a walking failure of what could have been. And like Kyle said, it's just almost like comedy at this point that they can't get anybody to go over there.
It's literally, it's comical. It's amusing. There's a bunch of different words that you could use to describe the state that the Knicks are in when it comes to bringing in superstars, because it just doesn't happen. They fail at every single turn when it comes to bringing in these guys. And I mean, look, when I look at that package that the Knicks gave up, I mean, that was a pretty penny that they were willing to give up for Donovan. So it wasn't a lack of effort. It's just they just can't they just can't make it happen, no matter what they do. And unless, I think it may have to do with ownership, maybe just because of the legacy that Dolan that's kind of had on that franchise. But I just, Kev, I mean, that's your city, bro. I mean, you know it better than I do. The
They're up in
Knicks
arms,
has,
bro.
like,
Twitter has erupted. I know plenty of my boys that are just livid. Like they don't even want to look at the NBA headlines right now because they know it's
because,
going to involve Donovan not being in New York.
oh, and the jokes are flying already. The memes are already out there with the Knicks. Like, the memes just kind of make themselves at this point. So it's just, the Knicks aren't going to go anywhere. They just, they just can't get these big name guys to come to the team. And ends up going to Donovan goes to Cleveland. Cleveland.
Of all places, bro. The only thing that's running through my mind is that post game interview with Joakim Noah like 10 years ago. Like, who says that anybody wants to go to Cleveland? Like, hey, I'm on vacation. I'm going to go to Cleveland. Like, that's the one interview that just keeps replaying in my head. It's hilarious because it's like, really? Like, you had a problem with Utah being a not big market. So you go to Cleveland. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like, it don't make sense, but we'll dwell on this topic for an absolute eternity. The bottom line is Donovan's not a Knick, and he's going to be a Cavalier or is a Cavalier, and we'll just kind of see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously, I think there will be more jokes that kind of come along the way when it comes to the Knicks this season, just because I don't know how their season's going to work out this year. It could have worked out better with Donovan in the fold, but who knows at this point. But Cleveland's got a good roster to work with. They got some young guys that are ready to prove something, and we'll see where it goes for them this upcoming season. But I think if you're a Cavs fan, I think you could have some genuine excitement for this season that's going to start fairly soon, within the next, I think, like month and a half. So
Yeah.
With that said, we're going to transition to some NFL topics. The first one being the Russell Wilson extension. Russell Wilson signed a massive 5-year deal, upwards of $240 million plus. So, obviously, going back to this past offseason, Russell gets traded from Seattle to Denver. Denver just completely reloads at the quarterback position. They'd given up on Drew Lock experiment, and they bring in a seasoned vet, a Super Bowl champion with Russell Wilson, and now they are locked long term with him for at least the next 5 years. And really, at this point, it just comes down to whether or not that the Denver Broncos are going to be viable for not only just a top spot in the AFC, but can they possibly make it to a Super Bowl and be possible Super Bowl champions now that Russell Wilson is locked in for the next 5 years? And that's the question that I have for Kev. So, Kevin, to kick this one to you, with Russell Wilson signed for the next 5 years with the Denver Broncos, do you think that the Broncos have a legitimate chance to be Super Bowl contenders over those next 5 years with Russell at the helm?
If anybody says no, I don't think they understand the sport. Literally, Denver has been a quarterback away from at least playoff contention for the last 2 to 3 years. And, depending on who you ask, you may even go further back because they had such a good defense when Von Miller and those boys were there. But now you have Patrick Surtain, you have Justin Simmons, you have, oh my God, Bradley Chubb, and so many other good pieces on that defensive side of the ball. Name me the last time that Russell Wilson had a solid defense. Oh, that's right. They won the Super Bowl. Name me the last time that Russell Wilson had a consistently healthy receiving core and backfield. Oh, that's right. They won the Super Bowl. I know that he had Metcalf and Lockett, but with just those two targets, no offensive line, no consistent run game with injuries in that backfield, Russell had to shoulder the load of a franchise that was just not doing what they needed to do to protect him, and that includes the offensive line. So if you're going to look at me and tell me that it's not possible for Russell to at least put them into the conversation of Super Bowl contention with a top 10 defense and potentially a top 5 offense this season, I think you're crazy. Now, he's in the most competitive division in football with absolute demons for quarterbacks in that, with Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, Patrick Mahomes, and now himself. But I think that the pieces that they have around them make them a better suited team than Las Vegas. I think that they are right up to par with LA. I think that potentially on paper, they are better than the Chiefs. Aside from Patrick Mahomes being better than Russell, I think that the Broncos defense is better than the Chiefs. I think that the Broncos receiving core is better than the Chiefs, especially with the loss of Tyreek Hill. You're looking at this and you have to say, if this group can stay together, if this group can stay healthy and show promise this season, because it is the inaugural year at Russell being in Broncos County, country, whatever the hell that ongoing joke is, I really believe that Russell is poised to at least make one more Super Bowl run before this contract is up. And I wouldn't be surprised they host the Lombardi within the next 5 years.
I take those points for what they're worth, but I am going to say this. I'm with you on the point of the Broncos possibly being Super Bowl contenders over the next 5 years. Do I actually think that they'll make a Super Bowl, though? That I actually have a high level of suspicion. And it's because of the points that you made with the division that they're in. Kev, that AFC West is
It's a
a
walking gauntlet.
gauntlet. It's a gauntlet. And this is not like what it used to be in the NFC West. Because, look, face it, in the NFC West a couple years ago, Seattle was right alongside LA and Arizona and the 49ers. And all of those teams were super competitive just a couple years ago. And once the Legion of Boom started kind of falling by the wayside towards the end of their run in Seattle, Seattle was never really able to recapture that early spark that they had in that Super Bowl run where they went to 2 straight Super Bowls and almost won 2 in a row. And granted, this is a new frontier for Russell Wilson. Goes to a team that is relatively young, that defense is high flying, young, and they have something to prove. And they, on paper, look like a pretty solid team that could make the playoffs this year. And I'm of the mindset that Denver's going to be extremely competitive in the AFC West this year. I don't know if it's going to turn out to winning the division. Kevin and I already picked the Chargers to win this division, but that doesn't mean that the Broncos aren't going to have a say in that. And it's simply just because of what Russell Wilson brings to the table. I really do think that Tim Patrick injury is going to hurt them. Because when I look at their depth chart, let me just pull it up here real quick. I mean, look, in the backfield, you got Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Those are two solid running backs to work with. For your wide receivers, you got Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and KJ Hamler. You throw Tim Patrick into that equation, had he not gotten hurt, I definitely think that they had the requisite pieces on the offense to be able to go toe to toe with not just any team in the AFC West, but any team in the NFL, period. It just, it depends on whether or not that Russell Wilson could stay upright in the season. And that's really been the biggest thing that Russell's faced with in Seattle. Couldn't deal with an offensive line just because he was getting sacked significantly towards the back half of his tenure with the Seahawks. And the defense that he had in Seattle in the last couple of years was atrocious. They were giving up at least 25 to 30 points a game per season in the last 2 to 3 years. So obviously those are going to be points of emphasis going into this year with Russell Wilson and the Broncos. Like I said, I do think that there's a chance that the Broncos could be competitive for a Super Bowl. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get there. And it's just because the AFC West is a gauntlet with Justin Herbert with the Chargers. You got Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, and you got Derek Carr with the Raiders. Overall, I'm still in the mindset that the Chargers are probably going to be the team to beat in the division. But do I see the scenario where the Broncos could probably find their way in second place in that division? Yeah, I think so. It's just they have to go out there and prove it. But I will say this. Without Russell Wilson, this team would be going nowhere. Drew Lock kind of proved that just because he wasn't able to get them over the hump. But I do think that Russell makes them an extremely competitive team. And when you look at them compared to the rest of the AFC, I think that they could definitely say something. But do I think that it's necessarily going to lead to a Super Bowl in his time there? I'm still skeptical on that. That's just how I see it.
You're not wrong for the skepticism. Everything that you said rightfully is justified. It's just a matter of I think John Elway knows what he's doing. When he went and made a move for a veteran quarterback the last time, they went and they made 2 Super Bowl appearances and won one of them with a similar group. Obviously, the wide receiver core has a lot more to prove than what Demarius Thomas, Eric Decker, and a lot of those players, like what was it, Julius Thomas at the tight end position as well. There was just so many just incredible players on that team. But who's to say that Russell can't bring the best out of Jeudy and Sutton also? So I'm not trying to make the comparison like Peyton and the Broncos Super Bowl team, but they have the pieces to do it again. I believe that they are in the position to potentially compete for it. But like you said, with this division being as competitive as it is, it's not as clear cut and concise as it was for the Broncos a couple years ago.
I want to make one point about the protection that Russell's going to get because I'm looking at the sack stats from last year as far as how many sacks each team gave up. The Bears led the league. They gave up 58 sacks last year. It was just absolutely atrocious. But Denver gave up 40. They gave up 40 sacks last year. That's a pretty high number. Now I know that he can utilize his legs and he can scramble out of the pocket, but I still think that pressure is going to be an issue just because the offensive line could be a point of contention for the Broncos this upcoming season. But compared to last year when he was with Seattle, he got sacked 46 times. Or the Seahawks gave up 46 sacks last year. So, it's a slight improvement. You're going from a team that gave up 46 sacks to 40, but still, there's some holes in that offensive line. And
yeah, but they also had to make that decision they also had those issues between Bridgewater and Drew Lock. And
yeah,
both of those guys aren't exactly the most decisive in the world. And a lot of their receiving core was injured last year with Jerry Jeudy being in and out. Cortland Sutton had tore his ACL. Like there was when you don't have options to throw to, inconsistent leadership at the quarterback position, and then questionable offensive line play, of course sacks are going to happen as opposed to Seattle's was just bad.
yeah, and that's the point that I wanted to make with Russell and his legs because I think when it comes to Russell compared to Drew Lock and Teddy, not to really critique those guys in this way, I think Russell's a little bit more aware of when to bounce out of the pocket and try to pick up yards on the ground. Just because I think, by and large, I think Russell just has better awareness to know
Pocket
when a
awareness.
plays. Yeah, just to know when a plays. They have a play set up, just not going. The defense is getting pressure, and try to bounce it out and try to get some yards that way. I think Russell just has better awareness than what Denver had last year with Teddy and Drew. But the one thing that I had to point to, if Denver were to not be as successful this year, it's probably going to be that offensive line. That's just a
Agreed.
point that I want to make about what to look forward to for the Broncos this year. Obviously, I know that Russell's a huge point of emphasis going into this year, and I do think that Denver's going to take a massive step forward compared to what they were last year. I don't want to miss that point entirely, but if they do struggle throughout the year, we got to look to that offensive line because I mean, numbers don't lie. I know they had 40 sacks. They gave up 40 sacks last year. I would like to assume that those numbers are going to go downward this year, but if they remain the same throughout this year, I think that's something that we kind of have to pay attention to with Denver. But overall, I think Denver's going to be a solid team this year. I think Denver's going to be right in the mix. But it's the AFC, bro. AFC is stacked from top to
Big
bottom.
time.
So there's no guarantee that I know we even picked the Chargers to win the division. Chargers, not. I wouldn't automatically assume that the Chargers are going to the Super Bowl. Not this year. And I wouldn't even say the same thing for the Broncos. So
I didn't say this year. I said, within five, I
with
would not
yeah,
be surprised if they did.
this year, I don't think it's going to happen with Denver. I don't think Denver's going to get to a Super Bowl. I don't even think they're going to make it to the AFC Championship game. But could they make a wild card and maybe get to the divisional? Yeah, maybe. I think that's best case scenario. If they even go past that, even better. Then they're really kind of, beating first year expectations at that point. It's just at this point, we'll kind of see what happens with them. But still, good team nonetheless.
Agreed.
All right. So with that said, we're going to talk a little bit about the Eagles. And Kev, I'm going to let you take the floor on this one just because I know this has kind of become like your second favorite team to roll with. I know the Colts are still number one in your heart. They always will be. But the Eagles have been busy the last week or so. They've made some moves. They've made some trades. So, Kevin, I'm going to just let you take this one from here. Just give us your sense of where the Eagles stand after the busy week that they've had with all the moves.
Well, obviously, we already know the Eagles' offseason has been absolutely incredible. Without what's been happening this week, you acquire Bradbury, you go out and you get A.J. Brown, you draft Jordan Davis, you draft Nakobe Dean, right then and there, absolute W for an offseason, right? Then they proceed to go and get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson from the Saints for basically nothing, a 2023 fifth-round pick, and then I believe a 2024 sixth-round pick. So you basically get an all-pro potential safety. You have two all-pro corners. You have basically two of the best players in the entire draft on the defensive side of the ball. Fletcher Cox is healthy. You also go out and you sign Hassan Reddick for pass rush. You get Brandon Graham back. I'm not really understanding where the Eagles are going to fall this year. If the Eagles do not win the NFC East and go deep into the playoffs, this is only their own fault. Like there's no one else to blame but Philadelphia. You also traded Jalen Reagor. You traded J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. You got rid of Greg Ward. So your receiving room is at least more put together. It's more for sure. The receivers that they have on the roster are a little bit more trustworthy. Dallas Goedert is healthy. The backfield of the Eagles is healthy thus far with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. It's really hard for me not to cheer for them when they have a squad like this. The Eagles have not had a squad like this on paper since the uneventful super team with Vince Young and all of those guys that ended up coming to the Eagles in that offseason. And I'm not trying to say that that's what this team is because I believe they're better. And I think that the only thing that's going to keep them from winning is going to be the consistent struggle with developing Jalen Hurts. We know that he's had accuracy issues. We understand that he has not been able to make the right decision with the ball, and sometimes it leads to turning it over. But if he's been able to develop and work this offseason, if he is going to take that next step, now is going to be the time for the Eagles to capitalize. I'm not saying that the NFC is weak, but I think that it is not as strong as it has been, especially with the departure of Russell Wilson, Tom Brady being at the end of his career. Not to say that he's on a decline, but again, he is older, so there is that possibility of a slump. I'm not saying that to make a jab at Kyle. I just truthfully believe eventually it's got to come to an end. But I truthfully believe, without a doubt, the Eagles' moves that they have made this entire offseason have them poised to make a very, very deep run in the NFL postseason this year. And I believe that wholeheartedly. They're not just going to win the East. I think that they're going to maybe compete for an NFC championship appearance. And that's just a fact with with what they have on paper right now.
An NFC championship appearance?
Dude,
You're willing
you
to go
have
that
two
far?
lockdown corners. Lockdown. James Bradbury is one of the best corners in the league. Darius Slay has been one of the best cornerbacks since he's been in the league. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is now going to be able to convert to a full-on safety position. The secondary is arguably the best secondary in football right now. That's insane, Kyle. Like, now you just have to literally score. That's all you have to do. You have to put points on the board. They led the NFL in rushing last year. Jalen Hurts literally just needs to be more accurate. A.J. Brown's a top 10 receiver in the league. Devontae Smith was the best rookie receiver in the league last year.
Okay.
I'm
So
serious.
okay. So let me get this straight here. So you think that the Eagles are going to the NFC Championship? Who do you think they're going to play?
It's either going to be the Rams or the Bucks because it sure shit isn't going to be the Packers. I don't think Minnesota has enough experience to take that next step. I think they beat the Vikings to go to the NFC Championship.
Because the way that I see it is more than likely, granted, this is just kind of like a preseason projection. I think that the Rams and the Bucks are probably going to play in the
Unless
NFC
they play in the
Championship,
divisional.
unless they play in the divisional. Yeah, and that could happen. I mean, that happened this past season. Could it happen again? Yeah, sure. But well, let's face it. The last time that the Eagles played, do you remember what happened in that NFC wildcard game? Do you remember
It
that?
was an embarrassment, right?
I mean, it was 31-0, and then Philly kind of got like 15 garbage time points to kind of make it a respectable
I'm
score.
not denying that. I said it's on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts. They have the pieces on defense to make it happen.
I think it's also on the coaching staff too to get their freaking play calling right too.
But they picked it up in the second half to where they led the league in rushing, and they actually you just can't run on Tampa. Tampa has arguably the best rush defense
Oh,
in the NFL.
I
So when
know
you
that.
have that and Jalen Hurts' inexperience, you're not going to win. And you have Tom Brady on
Well,
the other side, bro.
and I will say this, when it comes to the Eagles, look, bring like AJ Brown into the fold as your number one target to throw to for Jalen's sake. I mean, that's a big upgrade, and I'm not gonna miss that point. But the one thing that I need to see from the Eagles is, well, first of all, can they actually topple the Cowboys in their own division? And I know that the Cowboys, they're going to be a team in flux this year, as far as I'm concerned, just because their defense consistently gives up a lot of points. I know that Trayvon Diggs had literally a million interceptions last year, but he also gave up the most yards compared to any other corner on top of that. And, you lose someone like Amari Cooper, there's kind of a void that's going to be filled. I know CD's pretty solid, but I don't know if Michael Gallup's going to really rise to that second
Isn't
wide
he out
receiver.
for the year?
No, he's not. They took him off the pup
Isn't
list.
Michael? Didn't he? Oh, they took him off.
They took him off the pup. Yep.
Oh, I thought he was going to be at least missing a significant amount of games.
Nope. They took him off the pup. So he'll be in the fold for Dallas this year. It's just, if the Eagles can claim the top spot in the NFC East, I mean, good on them. I mean, let's face it, the NFC East is a dumpster fire of a division anyway. So winning the division is not really what I would consider special. But when I look at the rest of the NFC, I will say that the Rams are still, I mean, they're Super Bowl champions. I'm not going to sleep on the 49ers. The 49ers got all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. I know that it's weird for me to say because I didn't have a lot of faith in the 49ers last year. I remember we used to talk about the 49ers last year with the issues that they had with Jimmy G. And yet they were still able to get all the way to the NFC Championship game.
Trey is a rookie, basically. I got to see him do something.
I know. And it wouldn't surprise me if Jimmy actually gets some burn too throughout the season. Wouldn't surprise me. It's just, I think at best, I think the Eagles may be like the third or fourth best team in the conference. I'd say maybe the fourth, just because if you're just basing it off of divisional winners. We'll see what happens with Green Bay. Green Bay's a toss-up for me. I don't know what's going to happen with them this year.
No faith in them, to be honest.
I look, they were the number one seed the last 2 years and didn't do anything with it.
Exactly.
So, and them losing Devontae Adams, that offense with a lot of young wide receivers to work with, I don't think it's going to necessarily work out with them. Minnesota could maybe supplant them just because Minnesota has a pretty prolific offense with the rise of Justin Jefferson. But I don't think that the Eagles are going to go to the NFC Championship. I think they can make a divisional round though. I think they can get out of the wild card round, and I think that
So
they can be
aside
competitive.
from the Bucks, and aside from the Rams, you got Minnesota over the Eagles
I think with their offense, I think they got a shot. I think that Minnesota.
against that Philadelphia defense.
I think that Minnesota could go toe to toe with them. I'm not. I would think that it would be a competitive game. Now, the one thing that the Eagles would have to do is they'd have to score, and they could score against Minnesota because, well, let's face it, Minnesota has a pretty porous defense. But I think that the Vikings could still score. I don't know whether or not that. I understand the case that you've made with the defense that Philly now has at their disposal. I just have to see it first.
Yeah,
I have to see it
it's good, bro.
because
That first level, I don't think people understand. Hargrave, Cox, Davis, and Hassan Reddick.
Mhm.
Bro, those four guys in and of themselves could be Pro Bowlers. Two of them are all pros.
Yeah.
Like, that is nuts.
yeah,
And now you
they
have
just
arguably the best linebacker from this draft that needs to stay healthy. He's undersized. Everybody knows that. But again, the best linebacker. And then the secondary that they have, the weakest thing right now is their second level at the linebacker position. Outside of Nakobe Dean, they don't really have much. That secondary, bro, good luck. Good luck. James Bradbury and Darius Slay, bro, that's lockdown, bro. That's lockdown. That's not bias at all. That's just facts.
and Gardner Johnson.
But he's not playing the nickel this time. He's going to convert. The big reason why they made the trade was because they said you will play safety.
It's fine. It's fine.
That's nuts.
Yeah, look, their defense is solid. I'm not saying that they don't have a nice defense, but to me, I just have to see how it works out, how they're able to mesh. If they're able to mesh well and they're able to lock down chemistry on that defensive side,
Can you at least tell me that
I
it's
think
not a
that
0% chance that they
I
go to the NFC Championship? I don't
I
think
think
it's dude.
I think they could win 11 games this year. I think they
I
could win
agree. I said
11.
the same thing. I said
I-
11-6.
Yeah, 11-6. 12-5 would be, I think, a little bit too far of a stretch for me.
That's if they sweep their way through the division.
I think they're going to split with Dallas. I think Dallas
Yeah,
is going to be able to get one.
I
think
think they'll
Dallas gets
split
one
for
of them.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they'll get the Giants. Even though that the Giants, I mean, look, maybe they could get one game to kind of make it competitive, but I think there's a very good chance that the Eagles sweep both the Commanders and the Giants. I think the Cowboys will be a tricky one though, just because Dak is still able to
Dallas
score
has their
points.
number lately.
Yeah, Dak in that Dallas offense, they could still score points. It's just whether or not they can hold it up on the back end with the defense. But no, I would say right now, on paper, the Eagles I think are probably the fourth best team in the NFC. I think that that's fair.
I think that's fine.
Because I still think that the Rams are the best team. Rams are the best team right now on paper in that conference. The Bucks are probably either second or third, depending on who you ask. You know, I don't know why I have this faith in San Francisco. I really don't know why. It's just for some odd reason they're able to make it work. And
Well, they're not going to win the division, obviously, because it's going to be the Rams. So they'll be a 5th or 6th seed, or 7th seed, should I say? One of those.
yeah, it's whether or not that I think the Vikings or the Packers are better than the Eagles, and I just don't think that Green Bay is going to be able to do that much on the offensive side. If Aaron Rodgers is able to make magic work with those receivers, those young wideouts, then things might change a little bit. But there's been a lot of chemistry issues that they've been working on in Green Bay through these preseason games. So it hasn't really been smooth as far as the transition is concerned for Green Bay. But when it comes to the Eagles, yeah, I would say that they're probably fourth right now. At least in my head, they're probably fourth.
The Bengals were 3rd or 4th last year, and they went to the Super Bowl.
They did.
They had the worst offensive line in football outside of the Bears.
I will say this, though. Baltimore was also bad. They gave up like 57 sacks last year, too. So they were kind of like in that same group. But overall, I mean, do I think that the Eagles can make an NFC Championship game? You've made a compelling case. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I said I believe they have a chance with the pieces assimilated and with Howie making the moves that he did, pulling the trigger on trades. making the draft picks that they made and going out there and re-signing certain players to specific deals. Kelsey coming back on a 1-year deal, Lane coming back. I think, well, obviously, I forgot to mention Andre Dillard just fractured his fucking forearm. So there's that, which is just ridiculous because he can't stay healthy at the guard position. So we'll see what happens in that regard. But that's neither here
Yeah,
nor there.
it it
Overall, it's just what I just,
it,
I think it's going to be
it,
crazy.
it really just kind of depends if the team overall is able to just maintain the consistency that they had in the second half last year that got them into the playoffs. But I mean, the last time that we saw them played, Tampa smacked them.
Yeah,
Tampa gave them the business. If
agreed.
if they're able to learn from their mistakes and they're able to run the ball effectively, and if Jalen's able to be more consistent as far as the completion percentage is concerned, who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think an NFC Championship's a little bit of a stretch for me. I could see them making a divisional round and making that game competitive, but NFC Championship's a little bit too big of a stretch. But definitely a team on the rise, though. Definitely not gonna slight them there in that regard. But with that said, we are going to transition to our last segment. We're going to kick it over to some college football. Obviously, college football is back. It's been a long time coming, but we are here, and we have a lot of great matchups to go over in week 1 of the college football season. So, Kevin, to kick this one to you, with college football now in full swing once again, what are some early games that you see on Saturday as potentially good ones to watch?
Dude, I'm right off the bat, the biggest game, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Can't believe that that's literally going to be one of the first games of the entire season. I can't believe that that game is going to be aired. What is it, a 3:30 game? You know, you usually, I don't know why with college.
7:30. 7:30.
Oh, shoot, 7:30. Never mind. Disregard exactly what I said. I don't know why. I'm looking at a bunch of different times. There's like thousands of games in front of me with all these no-name colleges, and of course, I'm struggling to find the schedule I just had in front of me. But Ohio State being ranked 2, Notre Dame being ranked 5. Notre Dame, and I will say this publicly to any Notre Dame fan in the entire universe, and I will go to bat with this until the day I stop breathing. You are the most overhyped franchise or school university since before I was alive. You have not been relevant since the 80s, and you are 3-21 against top ranked teams in the country. There's no argument behind that. There's nothing, there's no counterpoint. You can be a top 3 seed team in the playoff and get absolutely smacked every single time. You were one of the greatest teams in college football the year you guys faced Alabama with Manti Te'o and all those boys, and you got obliterated off the face of the planet. It goes to show SEC talent goes way too far, and it is just that much better than so many other conferences. Aside from, of course, Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten, you have some talent in the Pac-12 with Oregon and, of course, Utah last year. In the big, what's it called? Now I'm starting to go blank. In the Big 12, you obviously have Texas, Oklahoma, and a couple of other schools that kind of trickle in there, but the powerhouse will always be the SEC. The ACC had a couple of flares where obviously Miami tried to come back, and then of course Florida State had their run. Clemson had their dominance with obviously Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, but we all know the power relies in the SEC for college football. And that's all I'm really going to say. I mean, there's some other games. You have Florida playing Utah in the swamp. I'll be at that game. I'll be sending Kyle a bunch of pictures, so I'll definitely have some stories for you guys. I mean, there's some like handful of games I'm looking at here. I mean, like Auburn and Alabama are playing some no-name schools. So, I mean, just to look at a big university playing somebody, Nebraska, North Dakota, Miami, BCU. It's so weird. The first week, there aren't a lot of like marquee matchups aside from like big name schools playing bigger name schools. Florida's not ranked, but Florida being in the SEC, Utah being a top 10 ranked school, that's going to be a pretty solid game. But I mean, I'm solely religiously focused on that Ohio State game. I think that is going to be absolutely insane. Ohio State just fell short of making to the playoff last year. Notre Dame just is Notre Dame, and I really, really believe that that's going to probably be the game of the week.
Yeah, Kev, I think it's going to be a lot of sad face emojis when it comes to that Utah Florida game. And I'm not saying that from my perspective. You've already been telling me
100%.
that Florida's going to get mollywopped in that game.
Yeah.
So,
We didn't get better
oh,
on defense. Offensively, we're young. It's going to be tough.
I mean, as far as the rest of the slate goes, there's 2 games of mention that I want to bring up. when I look at this 3:30 matchup between Georgia and Oregon, I think this is going to be a huge game, simply just because Georgia's coming off of a national championship last year. Oregon is ranked number 11, so you have a good 3 versus 11 matchup. The game's going to be taking place at the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. I think it's going to be a great game to kind of kick off the weekend. And then there's another game that I kind of want to bring up. It's basically kind of like towards I want to say the back half of the top 25, and that's Cincinnati and Arkansas. You got a nice 23 matchup against 19 Arkansas, or with Cincinnati ranked 23rd compared to Arkansas at 19th. That's another 3:30 game as well. I think it's going to be an extremely competitive game. When I look at the rest of the slate here, I think a lot of these are going to be blowouts, though. Alabama going up against Utah State, I think it's going to be an ass kicking. I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama wins that game by 40 plus. When I look at BYU versus South Florida, I think BYU is going to wipe the floor with USF. When I look at Oklahoma versus UTEP, I think Oklahoma's going to put up like 60 points in that game. I wouldn't be surprised if they win by probably 5 touchdowns in that game. And then just to kind of round this out, Michigan State's going to beat up Western Michigan. Texas A&M is going to mollywop Sam Houston, and Michigan's probably just going to run over Colorado State. So overall, I mean, like Kevin said, there are some huge games to go over. Really, probably the biggest ones are that Ohio State Notre Dame game, and then probably the Georgia Oregon game. Those are definitely the ones that I'm going to be paying attention to on Saturday. But when it comes to the rest of the ranked teams going up against their respective competition, I think they're going to be blowouts. So it just kind of just how it goes. Sometimes you have to have a tune-up game early on in the year to kind of get you set going into the year. But uh, really, the two games that I wanted to focus on were that number 3 versus 11 matchup with Georgia versus Oregon, and don't sleep on that Arkansas matchup. I think that Arkansas versus Cincinnati matchup is going to be a solid one as well.
Yeah, I had the wrong college schedule, so I guess I must have typed something wrong. I had the FIC or FI whatever, and it wasn't showing me all the marquee games. I go to ESPN, and of course, that's what I should have done in the first place. Now that I see the slate, I'm gonna, of course, sadly agree with Kyle, considering I watch more college football than he does. Um, at that Georgia Oregon game is gonna be wild. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we all know the program that Oregon has out there. We all know the defending national champions are nowhere near done with what it is that they always produce year in and year out. So that's going to be a massive game. I agree completely. That one I'm going to circle. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch it because I'm going to be at the tailgate, but we'll see what happens. It is Isabel and our friends' first time tailgating at a college football game, and with the game being at night, it's going to be pretty confusing for a lot of them to kind of get behind starting to drink at whatever time that is. So, wish me luck with patience because I don't know how that's going to go, but we'll figure it out.
All I know is this is something that I learned. So Kevin and I went to a Florida game a couple years ago. I think Florida was playing against LSU, if I remember correctly. It was a
Yep.
wild game. Florida ends up upsetting LSU. Florida ended up getting a pick six late in the fourth quarter. Literally, the swamp went nuts
The
when that
ground was
play
shaking.
happened. I remember I just kind of went as like a relatively casual fan. Like I wasn't really rooting for any team specifically. I was just there for sports. But overall, when that pick six was made to kind of clinch it for Florida, dude, my mouth literally dropped wide open. I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like this place is going nuts. But if there is one thing that I learned about SEC tailgating is that the older alumni, and I'm not talking like the 20 and 30-year olds. I'm talking like the 40, 50, and 60-year-old alumni. Do they go harder than the younger kids do? Like when it comes to tailgating, those older people, they don't care. They will go just as hard as some of those younger kids when it comes to tailgating and when they're drinking. Bro, they can go toe to toe with anybody. People will start drinking, will start going hard at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, especially if it's coming to a big game. If there's a big upcoming game where there's a lot on the line, they're gonna be there. They're gonna be there for a good time. Whether they win or lose, you're gonna drink regardless, and it doesn't stop those people from doing what they're gonna do. So I just remember just the atmosphere of going to a big SEC game, especially when it was Florida against LSU back in the day. Bro, those people were lit, all of them, and I'll never forget the older people were having just as much fun, if not having more fun, than the actual kids that were going to the school. I think it had to do with the fact that I don't know why. I think a lot of people our age we have our faces in our phones, and it wasn't like that with the older people there. I could tell you that they were having so much fun back in the day. I vividly remember that experience of literally walking to the stadium and there's thousands of people just taking the same walk to the stadium. I'll never forget that experience. It was great.
Guys, for those of you that are unaware of how it goes, man, we're talking people are set up and ready to go. My friend and I, Alicia, we went and drove from Fort Myers to the Gators, and we were going to meet our friend. That's a whole other story in and of itself. We ended up not seeing our friend, so we had to kind of wander the campus to kind of figure out a situation. Kyle was, I think you were getting off of work, and you ended up meeting us from Tampa like
Yep.
about an hour before the game
Yep.
because Kyle had our third ticket.
Mhm.
But while Militia and I are walking around, we're just looking at how beautiful the campus is, kind of seeing it. Bro, people are tailgating everywhere from in front of the stadium, on the campus, in the
For
dorms,
miles.
outside the
For
dorms.
miles.
Literally, it's not an exaggeration. Like people are set up with their pickup trucks, setting up actual full on, almost like camping tents
Yeah.
with generators, not a generator, generators
Campers,
to
RVs, you
watch
name
the
it.
to watch the other games going on throughout that day because the Gator game was a 3:30 game. I'll never forget. The, these fucking people were sitting there. We roll bottles of alcohol, bottles of beer, cases of beer, and they're sitting there, they're grilling, they're eating, and they're watching the games that are going on. It is the craziest experience I've ever been a part of. College tailgating, nothing like it.
It smokes NFL tailgating. And look, I know people in the people who are fans of NFL teams. I know that they can tailgate pretty hard, but there's levels to this, dude. Those SEC tailgates are unlike anything I've ever seen. I would just go back just for the tailgates. I could make probably 100 new friends just from tailgating if I
Yeah,
wanted to.
it's
With
ridiculous.
complete,
Dude, have you seen Blue Mountain State?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
It's like people think that show is nonsense.
No,
I wouldn't have believed it until I saw it with my eyes. I mean, people were
thousands.
absolutely annihilated before 10 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, like, trashed, sleeping on the road,
I
like
know.
unconscious. It was insane.
And not just like one or two people. We're talking like thousands, tens of thousands tailgating before making the move to the stadium.
And that's not even included. We're not even including the bars that surround the campus. That's not including the fraternity houses that are on the campus. Literally, like a mile strip of frat houses that were
Yep.
throwing parties. If I'm not mistaken, Militia and I walked past a frat house. Paulie D was DJing at that house. It was $100 cover to be there for like an hour before he went to the game. Nuts.
Damn.
Like a celebrity of Paul. Granted, he's not massive, but he's still a professional DJ. He's still technically famous because of his role on Jersey Shore. They had somebody of that magnitude at a frat house for a college football game. Insane.
He probably got a pretty penny for that deal, though.
100%, bro. It doesn't even matter. Even if he did it pro bono, bro, the fact that you were at a college,
I know.
not
At a
not
frat
a,
house.
not
At a
an
frat house.
arena,
No.
not an arena,
At a frat house.
not a bar, at a house. Nuts. We
Tearing it
saw
down.
through one of the fraternity like houses. It was one of those like open concept. The double doors were open because they had security at the front.
Yeah.
It was an open concept house, and you saw through to the ceiling. So it was one of those like square. You had to walk around the opening,
Yeah.
and you just saw through the backyard. I hate to say this rudely, just piles of women, just like massive, like hundreds of women in this house, and
Was
you
this a
saw the
soror-
DJ booth in the back.
So wait, this was at a frat house, right?
Yes.
Not a sorority house.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just
Nuts. I'll never forget that day. Granted, I drank that day, so I mean,
as you should.
I was there. I was there, but Militia and I didn't have a full tailgate to be a part of. We were supposed to
Yeah.
meet our friends for a tailgate of theirs. They ended up no, they did. They ditched us and they did their own thing. So we kind of drove up there and left early for nothing. But I mean, we ended up meeting some of her friends, but like they were a part of a fraternity doing their own thing. It wasn't really our vibe necessarily, so we kind of ended up leaving. But we met up with you after, and we ended up chilling, just sitting down, like just literally waiting, like I think on some freaking steps of somebody's apartment because we couldn't keep walking. We were exhausted.
I know, and it was hot that day. And
Oh my god,
thank God we were sitting on the side of the stadium that was shady,
the home side,
because
yeah.
on the other side, where it's just like it's basically just open to the sun, bro, people were baking.
Yeah,
And
bro.
it was
The
like 90
the
degrees walking into the
90
stadium
something,
that
yeah. No, it definitely was. It was
I
sometime in
mean,
November. It was hot.
I remember because I was sweating bullets when we were waiting outside the gates just to get into the stadium.
And it was a bum rush. There's no lines, guys. It's
No,
not a line.
it's lit. It's a massive pile of people just
It's a mosh
congregating
pit.
right into where security goes through, and
It's a
then
mosh pit.
yeah, I mean you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of people literally cramped into this small little space just outside the stadium, probably an hour and a half before the game.
Thankfully, I will toot my own horn. The way I know how to walk in big crowds because of New York, I was able to mush my way through enough drunk people to get to a pretty. We got in the stadium relatively quickly. I want to say 30
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah. I don't remember taking that long to get inside, so it was relatively quick.
Yeah, because I
But
think I think I think Militia
thank
made the
God,
point. Yeah, I
thank
think
God.
Militia made the point of saying let's get in front, like on the line before the actual stadium opens. And the only thing we had to wait for was them opening the gates to get in.
Yeah,
Other than that, we got to our seats relatively quick. But yeah, guys, it's college. If you've never done it, I advise it. I don't care if it's a Florida State game. I don't care if it's a Miami game. I'd prefer you go see the Gators because obviously that day made me a Gators fan. But man, if you haven't done it, I'm talking about a real college football game. I'm not talking about a Division II school or something like that. You got to go to a big school and go to a real tailgate.
Kev.
Greatest experience, arguably greatest experience of my life.
Kev, this is kind of just something I kind of came up with on the fly. And I'm not saying that we have to do this like this year. I'm just kind of thinking of it as a general idea. I think at some point, if we really kind of blow up and we really kind of, make
When we
waves
blow
and
up,
whatnot. Yeah, exactly. I think we got to hit like a different stadium each week in the SEC.
I wouldn't be opposed to it at
Go,
all. I
like,
mean, obviously the
I
SEC though, that's the only thing. It's
I know,
there's only
the,
one SEC school in Florida.
I know. You'd have to kind of.
We
That's
have
why
to
I'm
go all
saying.
the way to Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia's like, well, for me, it's like 6 hours to get to Georgia.
For me, it's 8, or Alabama, which would be probably
8.
10. No, because it's like we got to go up and then left over the Panhandle.
Yeah, I mean, to get to Tally from Tampa, it's 4 hours. From Fort
Then you
Myers,
got to
it's
go. Then you got to
6.
make a hard left.
Yeah, wait, then you have to trek north at that point once you hit the
Exactly.
Panhandle.
So it would have to be a
No,
flight.
but like like that's what I'm saying is like, when we get big, when
Yeah,
we
yeah,
get
yeah. It
big,
would be nuts. It would be nuts.
it'd be fun. But overall, I mean, it would just be kind of cool just to see which each stadium is like. I'm not talking about at the game, but like before the game, during the game, and after, especially if you win. So I think that team wins.
We didn't get to go out that night. I'm so upset.
I know.
You
I
had to
know.
go back home.
I
Me
had
and
to go back.
Alicia we were just pooped, bro, because we were drinking since like 8:30 in the morning. We didn't have the energy.
Yeah, I worked that morning. So I didn't get there until probably, like you said, like an hour and a half before game time. And I remember like from where I parked,
It
bro,
was
I
a
think it
deep
was,
walk.
bro, it was
It's
like a
like a
2 mile.
2 mile walk.
It was like a
It was a
two,
two
two and a
mile
half
walk.
mile walk. It took me 30 minutes to get to the stadium.
Yeah.
So, and
We met you halfway, but like it was still a good enough walk. Like we had to find you, and there's
I'm not the
shit
slowest.
reception.
I'm not the slowest walker. Like,
No, but it
I
doesn't help that there was shit service because thousands of people were probably using
oh
100 pounds of internet.
oh yeah, the amount of, if you could be able to get a call through, you were kind of lucky just because everybody's
Yeah,
probably on
it
their
was
phones or
it was
whatnot.
bad. It was
But
it was bad, but it was fun.
still, but I mean overall, bro, that was my SEC experience. I'll never forget that one.
I'm
And
doing it again on Saturday, and I can't wait.
shit, bro, I have to come up with another one later before the end of the
In the
year.
year, shit, I was talking about it with a couple of my boys. I'm about that action, bro. I love the swamp, bro. We just have to figure out where to go at the right time because I'm not trying to do a wandering tailgate again.
Yeah, if you could get like it depends. Like if we could get like an
I know
established tailgate.
people. I know people. It's just because obviously my friends graduated, and then the alumni that I know don't go to every game. So I have to kind of calculate it when they go. and then calculate where they're going to be, because then that's how we're going to meet people.
Yeah.
But I
But
know enough people. I'll make it happen.
but overall, bro, 9 o'clock, it's on. 9 o'clock in the morning, it's on.
Earlier than that, bro. Earlier than that, bro. It's the first game of the year. It's against a ranked team. It's our head coach's first game as a Gator. It's Anthony Richardson's second start. AR-15. Obviously, he stopped calling himself that for the right reasons, but it's his second career start, and we lost a lot of talent in the draft. And our defense was already mediocre as it is last year. Like,
Gotta give me a score.
I'm very,
bro.
I'm
Give me a score.
um,
Oh,
13-35. Utah.
that bad, huh? That bad.
Dude, we lost a lot. A
No,
lot.
no faith.
It's not about faith. It's just, bro, this is how college football works. If an upset happens, an upset happens. It's literally the sport to do it. It's just a matter of Utah's a defending Pac-12 champion. They're ranked 7th for a reason. I think that it's going to be very, very complicated.
Let's flip it here. What if they won?
I don't know what I would do. I think Isabel's probably going to disown me or leave me in Florida. Like, she's going to leave me in the stadium. I wish I was kidding. I talked about it with her, and she was like, if you embarrass me, I will walk away from you. And I was like, I need help walking. So you can't leave.
Listen, anything could happen, bro. I mean,
We were supposed to lose to LSU. I think they projected us to lose by 10 points or something like that, and we ended up winning by 13.
Yeah. I mean, it was a competitive game from what I remember.
Yeah.
But I mean, look.
Well,
I mean,
the Yankees also played that night and lost to Boston in the ALDS.
And of course,
So that's why I went back to well,
that
I
made
mean,
you
that's
upset.
why we went back. Well, that's why we went back to the hotel, not only to shower and like decompress from the freaking game. I wanted to at least watch some of the Yankee game, and then of course it's like after you shower and you're shot. It was like
Yeah.
once I got in the hotel bed, I was like,
It's like, oh god. I remember.
bro,
I think
I
I
couldn't get
remember.
up.
I remember. Did we stop at the place that you guys were staying before I left?
Yeah.
I
So like
remember.
literally, that's what we did. We all sat down just to like relax.
Yeah, because we were all still running with adrenaline at that point.
Dude, we left the arena. We just talked about it the entire car ride back. We talked about it for an hour at the hotel, and then you were like, "Bro, I got to drive back." I was like, "Yo, we about to go to the bar." Da, 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 and the Yankee game started, and then you were like, "Yo, I got to dip," and then legit, I got out the shower. The second I put my tush to the mattress, it was over, bro.
Yeah, because I think that was back when I was working at the golf course, and
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, I had to get up at like 4:45 in the morning the next day. So I was like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I would have loved to stayed, but
If
had
you
I,
would have stood, I don't think I would have sat down because I think I would have started drinking again, and I think we would have went out right there. You
100%,
leaving actually 100% had me like, I'm just gonna sit down for a little bit, rest, and
yeah, like you need a little bit of recovery. You need like just like that. I don't know, maybe like 20, 30 minutes, really just to kind of like recuperate a little bit.
something, bro. I know my legs were on fire, and I had sunburn because we were in the sun all day, like before you got there.
Yeah, and that was on our side of where we were sitting in the stadium. Had we been
No,
on the other,
that was sunburn from literally wandering the campus. Like we didn't know where we were going, so
oh
it was
yeah,
legit just out in the sun all day.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have that because I really was only there for. I think the game was at what 3:30, if I remember right.
3:30. You probably got there. I think
4 o'clock.
at 1:30. No, I think you got there at like 1:30,
It was like 1:30,
1:45.
like 1:30, 2 o'clock. It's kind of somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah, because we
And
walked back. We drank a little bit. Well, we drank a little bit when you got there, walked
yeah,
back, and then got on the line early because Melisha said, "Let's get there early," and then we got in there around 3:15.
I'm just telling you right now. I know there's probably like a certain image that you remember me when it comes to drinking in general because I don't really drink that much to begin with. Dude, I'm not the same.
That's fine.
No, 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 in a good way.
No, that's
I'll let.
fine. I'm
I
here
mean,
for it. That's here for.
bro. When
When
I'm in
we're
the
done
zone,
recording, we will figure out a game. We'll look ahead and we'll figure it out.
oh, 100%, 100%. But I know we kind of like went into story mode there for a little bit, but I'm
It's
totally
fine.
fine with it. But
I'm fine.
no, I think Kev, that's a good idea. So, But I don't know about you, but you ready to wrap this up?
Oh, absolutely. I'm exhausted.
Well, once again, just thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, once again, we got to shout out Electricast for giving us an incredible opportunity. The first major media company to really kind of give us a chance, and we definitely appreciate the support that we've been getting from them early on, and hopefully it continues with our time with them. And really, at this point, going into next week, we're going to be gearing up for the beginning of the NFL regular season. Preseason's over. All the teams are in the process of cutting down their rosters to 53 if they haven't already. So pretty much all the active rosters are set. And now it's just wait to kickoff, which is going to take place next Thursday. Obviously, next week we're going to be jam packed with NFL content. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if any NBA news pops up, I know the Donovan Mitchell news was a big one. Um, we'll kind of keep our eyes on that. But overall, I think it's going to be NFL from here on out. But Kevin, I got nothing more to say. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will keep you updated and abreast upon any news reveals as time eludes us. Uh, I will be gone in Gainesville probably till late Monday afternoon, if not late evening. So Kyle and I probably won't be putting anything out until more than likely Tuesday, if not Wednesday morning. But once that begins, like Kyle said, all NFL news all the time, unless something crazy happens in the NBA. We'll be going over college football every week, something we didn't do enough of last year. We're going to be very conscious of it because we know that's a different audience. But outside of that, please remember to follow us on all the socials. We just hit 1,000 followers on Twitter. We're almost up to 800 followers on TikTok. We're coming up to 520 followers, or should I say subscribers, on YouTube. And, this brand new audio platform that we're going to head up with Electricast, shout out to them. It's going to be a new endeavor for us. So we are looking forward to the challenge and the opportunity, like Kyle had said. But a lot has been changing. A lot of things have been going well for us. And we just can't wait to continue this as the NFL season begins. But with all that being said, we appreciate all the support, and we'll be seeing you guys next week.
Yep. See you guys until then.